Welcome to Starbound. My name is Aurum. I'll be your narrator for today. But before we get into today's story, please check below to see if you've subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and just allows our videos to show up on your feed more often. Grand Warlord Krex Thor stalked through the trophy halls, his scaled feet clicking against the polished obsidian floor. Behind him scurried scholar-slave Vin Tick, a pathetic specimen who had failed combat trials but whose brain apparently functioned well enough to catalog the spoils of victory.
And this section, glorious warlord, houses the remains of the 47th through 63rd species we have gloriously exterminated,
Vin Tick said, gesturing to rows of artifacts, preserved genetic samples, and what appeared to be the desiccated remains of various alien dignitaries. Krex Thor yawned, revealing 3 rows of serrated teeth.
I tire of this. Is there nothing of interest in this vault? I've conquered 17 worlds personally, and even I find this dull.
Vin Tick's neck frill fluttered nervously.
Actually, Supreme One, we discovered something unusual yesterday. An ancient data core buried beneath a collection of what we believe are ceremonial headdresses from the... I forget which extinct species.
The name is irrelevant. They're extinct. Show me this core.
The scholar led him to a small workstation where a dust-covered cylinder sat connected to translation equipment.
It's Zorak technology, your bloodthirstiness.
Zorak?
Krex Thor's crest rose slightly.
Even I have only heard legends of them. They were supposedly great warriors.
Yes, Supreme One. This appears to be a final recording from their High Chancellor.
Krex Thor flicked his tail impatiently.
Play it.
The core hummed to life, projecting a fuzzy hologram of a 6-limbed being. Its carapace was cracked, and what appeared to be blue blood leaked from multiple wounds. The chamber behind it was in flames.
This is High Chancellor Vexkra of the Zorak Imperium. If you are viewing this, we have fallen. Our empire spanned 3,000 worlds. We had technology that could shatter stars. We were gods among lesser beings, until we encountered them.
The hologram flickered as an explosion rocked the chamber. The Chancellor glanced fearfully over his shoulder before continuing.
We thought them weak. We thought their kindness was submission. We were wrong. We struck them first. We never got a chance to strike again.
Another explosion. Closer. The Chancellor's voice became frantic.
They showed no mercy. They did not stop at victory. They erased us like we were nothing. Not just defeated, humiliated, hunting us for sport, taking selfies with our dying warriors.
The hologram jolted as something massive impacted nearby.
To whoever finds this, heed our last words. Do not anger the humans. They are death incarnate, with a smile and a witty one-liner. The
recording cut to static as a silhouette appeared in the doorway behind the Chancellor. Bipedal, hairless except for the top of its head, wearing what appeared to be casual attire with a device in hand, pointed at the Chancellor.
Say extinction, asshole!
A flash, then nothing but static. Krex Thor burst into laughter, his massive frame shaking.
This is what ended the mighty Zorak. These humans look like larvae. Soft, no natural armor, no claws.
The gathered Kadar warriors joined their leader in mockery.
The Zorak were weak,
Krex Thor declared.
No empire that pathetic deserves to exist.
Vin Tick's neck frill fluttered anxiously.
But, Supreme One, our intelligence reports indicate the Zorak were among the most feared warriors in,
Krexthor's tail whipped across the scholar's face, sending him sprawling.
The only thing I fear, worm, is boredom, and I am very bored.
He turned to his war council.
Where is the nearest human settlement?
General Drak Vul consulted his datapad. A colony on the edge of the Arcturus system, Supreme One. Lightly defended, according to our scouts. Krexthor's eyes narrowed, a smile spreading across his reptilian face.
Prepare the invasion fleet. I wish to add human to our collection.
As the War Council departed, Vin Tick remained on the floor, staring at the frozen image of the human silhouette. If he wasn't mistaken, the human in the recording appeared to be laughing. The invasion of Earth Colony Arcturus 7 began precisely as Kadar military doctrine demanded, with overwhelming force against a supposedly inferior enemy. 300 warships dropped out of hyperspace, immediately launching 5,000 landing craft toward the modest settlement that housed approximately 10,000 human colonists. Fleet Commander Zex Krull watched from the bridge of the dreadnought Blood Harvester as the first wave descended.
Status report,
he barked. No resistance detected, Commander, his tactical officer replied. Their orbital defenses are inactive. Zex Krull frowned.
Inactive? Not even attempting to engage?
No, sir. They appeared to be powered down.
Primitive fools. They cannot even maintain their defensive systems.
Zex Krull sneered.
Any communications from the surface?
Nothing official, Commander, though we are picking up some unusual transmissions. Seems to be their civilian communications network.
Put it on screen. Let us hear the panic of our soon-to-be slaves.
The main view screen flickered to life, showing the colony's central plaza. To Zex Krull's confusion, there was no panic, no running, no screaming. Instead, humans were gathering. Many held containers of what appeared to be beverages. Some sat in portable chairs. One elderly female in a garment with floral patterns was actually setting up what appeared to be recording equipment. The audio came through clearly. Perfect weather for an invasion, Bob. Get the cooler over here. They'll be landing right in front of my hydrangeas. I want a good shot of their faces when they hit the lawn sprinklers. Zex Krull's crest flattened in confusion.
They're watching us? Like entertainment?
Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from the surface. Text only.
Display it.
A simple message appeared on screen. Betting pool now open. 10 credits say the lizards don't last 30 minutes. Any takers? Zex Krull's rage built as he watched the first landing craft touch down in the colony's central square. Kadar warriors poured out, weapons raised, only to find humans waiting. Not cowering, not hiding, just waiting. One human female in a loose cloth garment, a bathrobe according to the translator, stood at the front, holding a steaming beverage. Through the tactical feed, Zex Krull watched as Ground Commander Vrax approached the human, plasma cannon raised.
Surrender, weakling!
Vrax roared, the translation system broadcasting in what intelligence had identified as English. The human female took a slow sip from her container, then looked Vrax up and down. Before noon? Honey, I haven't even had my second cup of coffee. She gestured vaguely at the troops. You boys set up yet? Some of us have brunch plans later. Vrax's confusion was evident even through the tactical feed.
We are here to conquer your world, to add your species to our—
Yeah. The woman waved dismissively. To add us to your collection of extinct species, got it, very scary. Mind if I finish my coffee first? I'm Barbara, by the way. Zex Krull watched in disbelief as Vrax actually took a step back.
Kneel before the Kadar Dominion!
Barbara sighed dramatically.
Look, I'm 67 years old and I have arthritis. I don't kneel for anyone, especially not overgrown iguanas with superiority complexes.
She turned to the gathering of humans.
Okay, folks, they've had their chance to be reasonable. Party time!
What happened next defied explanation. The seemingly harmless objects scattered around the landing zone, children's toys, gardening equipment, even what appeared to be decorative gnomes, suddenly blinked with red lights.
Sir!
The tactical officer shouted.
Energy spikes across the landing zone!
The feed from Vrox's unit cut to static. Then the feeds from the second wave. Then the third.
Status report!
Zex Krull demanded.
We've lost contact with all ground forces, Commander.
Impossible! There were 5,000 warriors!
Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. Video!
The screen showed the same human female, Barbara, now sitting in a comfortable chair. Behind her, Kadar landing craft burned. There wasn't a single Kadar warrior visible.
Hi there, she waved cheerfully. Just want to let you know that your boys down here made quite a mess of my garden. Very rude. So we decided to escalate this little situation. I already called my grandson. He's in the military, you know. Such a nice boy. Anyway, he's bringing some friends to visit your fleet.
Zex Krull slammed his fist on the console.
This is absurd. All ships, commence orbital bombardment. Wipe this colony from existence.
Sir, his executive officer interjected. Our weapons aren't responding. Systems show they're being accessed remotely.
What?
The main view screen changed again. This time a human male appeared. Young, wearing an outfit covered in tropical vegetation patterns and what appeared to be reflective eye coverings pushed up onto his head. Hi there, lizard dudes. Governor Marcus Williams of Arcturus 7 here. Gotta say, I was having a really nice retirement until you showed up. He took a swig from a bottle. So, bad news. While you were distracted with our welcoming party, we went ahead and uploaded a little program to your fleet. Nothing fancy, just something my buddy coded during his lunch break. It's currently disabling your weapon systems and... oh yeah, venting your engine coolant into space. As if on cue, warning alarms blared across the bridge. You should be seeing the effects right about now. Zex Krull watched in horror as the tactical display showed his ships, his magnificent invasion fleet, beginning to drift out of formation as their engines failed one by one. Now, I'm a reasonable guy, Williams continued, adjusting what appeared to be a floral garland around his neck. So I'm gonna give you one chance. Leave this system, tell your leaders they fucked with the wrong species. Oh, and we're keeping those fancy ships of yours. Well, the ones that don't explode in the next few minutes.
This is impossible,
Zex Krull whispered as secondary explosions began rippling through his fleet.
We are the Kadar. We are the apex predators of the galaxy.
Williams laughed, a sound that would haunt Zex Krull's nightmares. Apex predators? That's cute. On Earth, apex predators are what we keep as pets. His expression hardened. You've got 10 minutes before we stop playing nice. Tick-tock, lizard boy. As the transmission cut, Zex Krull made the only decision he could.
All functioning vessels retreat to hyperspace. Return to homeworld.
Only 27 of the original 300 ships escaped. As the Blood Harvester limped away, the final transmission from Arcturus 7 was a simple text message. Say hi to your leaders for us. We'll be seeing them real soon. Supreme Warlord Krex Thor was not accustomed to failure. The news of the Arcturus 7 debacle had spread through the Dominion like wildfire, despite his best efforts to suppress it. Now, standing in the grand war chamber of the Kadar homeworld, he faced an unprecedented situation, explaining defeat.
It was a tactical withdrawal, he insisted to the gathered high command. A reconnaissance in force. We now understand our enemy better.
General Drak Vul, who had lost 2 sons in the failed invasion, hissed skeptically.
The reports suggest otherwise, Supreme One. The humans didn't just repel us, they humiliated us with minimal effort.
Before Krexthor could respond, the chamber's emergency alarms blared. The massive holographic display at the center of the room activated automatically, showing the outer system defense grid. A fleet had just arrived. Not just any fleet, the largest assemblage of warships many had ever seen.
Identify!
Krexthor demanded. The tactical officer's voice trembled.
Human vessels, Supreme One. They call it the 7th Fleet.
7th? They have at least 6 others? Someone whispered in horror. The display zoomed in on the lead vessel, a behemoth that dwarfed even the Kadar's largest dreadnoughts, emblazoned on its hull in massive letters, USS Consequences.
They are broadcasting on all frequencies, Supreme One.
Let us hear their pitiful threats,
Krexthor snarled, trying to maintain his composure. The hologram shifted to show a human female in a crisp, dark uniform adorned with various insignia. Her hair was pulled back severely, and her expression was one of utter, terrifying calm.
This is Admiral Helena Nicole of the United Earth Navy's 7th Fleet, also known throughout human space as the Oh Shit Armada.
Her voice was level, almost conversational.
I'd say I'm pleased to meet you, but that would imply I respect you enough to lie.
Krexthor stepped forward.
I am Supreme Warlord Krexthor of the...
I know exactly who you are,
Nicole interrupted, examining what appeared to be her fingernails.
The idiot who didn't listen to the Zorak warning. The genius who thought attacking a retirement colony was a good idea.
She looked up, her gaze piercing even through the hologram.
The soon-to-be extinct reptile who's about to learn what happens when you piss off humanity.
We are the Kadar,
Krexthor roared.
We have conquered hundreds of species. Your colony was merely the first of your worlds that will fall.
Nicole sighed and glanced off-screen.
Lieutenant, how long was it between their landing and our grandparents completely wiping out their ground forces?
An unseen voice replied.
27 minutes, Admiral, and 16 of those minutes were spent finishing brunch.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Nicole turned back to the camera.
I just wanted to establish the baseline here. Those were retirees, hobbyists, people who fight alien invasions for fun in between gardening and complaining about their arthritis.
She leaned forward, her expression unchanged but somehow infinitely more menacing.
We, on the other hand, are professionals.
Your threats do not frighten us, human,
Krexthor declared, though his neck frill had begun to flatten in the instinctive Kadar fear response.
Our fleet stands ready.
About that.
Nicole smiled thinly.
While we've been chatting, I've had my tactical officer analyzing your defensive capabilities. Lieutenant Bates is quite talented. In fact, he's already disabled 60% of your orbital platforms.
Frantic confirmations from the tactical officers confirmed the human's claim.
You see, Nicole continued, I could just obliterate your fleet right now, but where's the fun in that?
She gestured, and the hologram split to show tactical displays of the Kadar fleet.
Instead, I think we'll play a little game we humans call shooting fish in a barrel.
One by one, red targeting markers appeared on Kadar vessels.
You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, Nicole said, her voice now hard as steel. After that, we start shooting. And trust me, her smile returned, colder than the void of space. We don't miss. The transmission cut, leaving the war chamber in stunned silence. General Drak Vul was the first to speak. Supreme One, perhaps we should consider their terms. The reports from Arcturus 7 indicate technology far beyond.
Silence! Krex Thor roared. We are Kadar! We do not surrender. Prepare all vessels for battle. We will show these soft-skinned mammals the true meaning of war.
1 hour later, the Kadar fleet, 3,000 vessels strong, moved to engage the human 7th Fleet. It was not a battle. It was an execution. The human vessels didn't even bother with evasive maneuvers. They simply sat in formation, calmly targeting and destroying Kadar ships with surgical precision. Their point defense systems rendered Kadar missiles useless. Their shields shrugged off energy weapons like they were mere light shows. From the palace observation deck, Krex Thor watched his mighty armada being systematically dismantled. Each Kadar ship that exploded was accompanied by a casual announcement over the still-open communication channel.
Battlecruiser down. That's 50, sir. I believe you owe me 20 credits.
Dreadnought neutralized. Did you see that spin before it blew? 9 out of 10 for style.
Strike group eliminated. Man, these guys really suck at space combat.
After 30 minutes, half the Kadar fleet was destroyed. Not a single human vessel showed any damage.
Should we surrender, Supreme One?
Vin Tick whispered, having been summoned to translate some of the more colloquial human transmissions. Before Krex Thor could answer, Admiral Nicole's face appeared on the palace's main screen.
Getting bored out here, lizard boy,
she said, sipping from a container.
Tell you what, new game. We're going to target your flagship next. If your helmsman can dodge our shot, we'll give you another 30 minutes to reconsider your poor life choices.
On screen, Krex Thor watched as the USS Consequences slowly rotated, bringing its main weapon to bear on the Kadar flagship where his most loyal generals commanded.
Target locked,
came Lieutenant Bates' voice.
Just say when, Admiral.
Nicole made a show of checking a device on her wrist.
Let's see. I've got dinner reservations back on Earth in about 6 hours. Better make this quick. Fire when ready, Lieutenant.
A beam of blinding white energy lanced out from the human vessel, cutting through space and through the Kadar flagship like it was nothing. The massive ship didn't even explode, it simply split in two, both halves drifting apart as secondary systems failed.
Oops,
Nicole said flatly.
Looks like your helmsman needs better reflexes. Or, actual competence.
Krex Thor fell to his knees. For the first time in his life, he felt fear. True, primal fear.
Open the channel,
he rasped. Admiral Nicole's face appeared again, this time looking slightly bored.
Finally ready to talk, are we?
What do you want?
Krex Thor managed. Nicole's smile could have frozen a star.
Everything. But we'll start with your unconditional surrender, and then, Supreme Warlord, we're going to have a conversation about all those species you've collected over the centuries.
As the transmission ended, Krex Thor realized with horrifying clarity what the Zorak Chancellor had tried to warn them about. The humans weren't just dangerous. They were death with a smile. The Great Hall of Dominance, once the proud center of Kadar power, now served as the venue for their ultimate humiliation. Admiral Nicole sat casually at the head of the massive obsidian table, the very seat that had, until yesterday,
belonged to Supreme Warlord Krex Thor. The warlord himself now stood to the side, his ornate armor removed, wearing only the simple cloth of a subordinate.
Let's review the terms of surrender,
Nicole said, scrolling through a datapad with apparent disinterest. Lieutenant Bates stood behind her right shoulder, while a human male in a different uniform, identified as Diplomatic Specialist Carson, stood to her left. Krex Thor had never seen three beings command such terror in a room full of the galaxy's most feared warriors.
Article 1, Nicole continued. The Kadar Dominion acknowledges their complete and utter defeat at the hands of humanity, hereby recognized as, and I quote, the undisputed champions of intergalactic warfare and the coolest motherfuckers in the universe.
Diplomatic Specialist Carson suppressed a smile.
We can amend the language if you find it too.
No,
Nicole interrupted.
I like it exactly as written. The documentation of history should be precise.
She looked up at Krex Thor.
Any objections?
The former Supreme Warlord's neck frill lay completely flat against his scales.
No, Admiral.
Excellent. Article 2. The Kadar central government will immediately disband. All conquered territories will be granted independence. All slaves will be freed.
Nicole tapped on the datapad.
Furthermore, your capital city of Carvex will be immediately renamed to New Texas.
At this, Krex Thor couldn't contain himself.
But why? What strategic value does this serve?
Lieutenant Bates snorted.
Strategic value? None whatsoever. We just think it's funny.
Krex Thor's shoulders slumped. Not only were they being conquered, they were being turned into a punchline.
Article 3, Nicole continued. The Kadar species will surrender all technology related to interstellar travel and weapons development. You are confined to your homeworld until such time as humanity deems you civilized enough to join galactic society without, trying to exterminate everyone you meet.
That could be centuries,
General Drakvul protested. Nicole shrugged.
Should have thought of that before you started your little extinct species collection.
Which brings us to Article 4.
Diplomatic Specialist Carson interjected, his tone suddenly serious.
The complete surrender of all biological samples, cultural artifacts, and historical records of species eliminated by the Kadar.
The room fell silent. This was the true punishment, the dismantling of their twisted legacy.
Those are our trophies,
A young warlord in the back shouted.
the proof of our dominance.
Admiral Nicole didn't even look up.
Lieutenant Bates, please demonstrate opposition on objections.
Bates drew a sidearm so quickly it seemed to materialize in his hand. A single shot, barely a flash of light, and the protesting warlord collapsed, a precision wound through his shoulder.
Next one goes through the brain case,
Bates said calmly, holstering his weapon.
Any other concerns?
None came.
Article 5,
Nicole continued, as if nothing had happened.
The Kadar will erect monuments on every world they formerly controlled, detailing their crimes and subsequent humiliation at the hands of humanity. These monuments will include full-size statues of...
She paused, checking the datapad.
Barbara Wilson and Governor Marcus Williams of Octurus 7, the two retirees who single-handedly repelled your initial invasion force.
Krex Thor closed his eyes in shame. The final nail in the coffin of Kadar pride.
And finally, Article 6,
Nicole concluded.
The Kadar Ceremonial Vault of Conquest will be converted into a museum called Galactic Morons, a cautionary tale, with the centerpiece being the recording of this surrender ceremony.
She stood, walking slowly around the table to where Krex Thor stood. Despite being nearly 2 heads shorter than the reptilian warlord, she somehow loomed over him.
Do you accept these terms, former Supreme Warlord?
Krex Thor looked around the room at his broken leadership, at generals who couldn't meet his gaze, at advisors trembling with fear, at the once mighty Kadar reduced to cowering subordinates.
I accept,
he whispered. Nicole smiled.
Excellent. Lieutenant Bates, please prepare the treaty for signatures.
For the first time, Krex Thor saw something beyond casual disdain in the human's eyes, a cold, calculating fury that made his blood run cold.
The terms I've offered are merciful, she continued, because unlike you, we don't eradicate species for sport. Make no mistake, we considered it. The only reason your species survives this day is because we chose to be better than you.
She stepped back, addressing the entire room again.
The treaty will be broadcast live to every planet in the former Kadar Dominion, as well as to representatives from 37 other galactic civilizations who have expressed concern about your activities.
As the humans prepared the formal document, scholar-slave Vin Tick approached Krex Thor cautiously.
Supreme One, he whispered. I have been studying human history since their arrival. Their capacity for violence exceeds even our own, but their capacity for mercy is equally vast. We should consider ourselves fortunate.
fortunate.
Krex Thor hissed.
We are ruined.
Yet we live,
Vin Tick replied.
The Zorak do not, nor do the countless others who underestimated humanity's response to aggression.
As if on cue, Admiral Nicole's voice cut through their whispered conversation.
By the way, we'll be stationing a small fleet in your system to ensure compliance. Just a few ships, nothing major.
The holographic display activated, showing the human fleet in orbit. At its center, a vessel so massive it dwarfed even the USS Consequences.
That's the USS Don't Even Think About It,
Nicole explained casually.
Just commissioned last month, needed somewhere to test it out.
The message was clear. Any thought of rebellion would be suicide. The formal surrender of the Kadar Dominion took place an hour later, broadcast across the galaxy. Krex Thor's claw trembled as he pressed it to the DNA-sensitive document pad, finalizing humanity's terms. As the ceremony concluded, Lieutenant Bates approached Krex Thor with what humans called a handshake, a gesture the translator described as signifying agreement between equals. Krex Thor hesitated, then accepted the human's hand.
Just between us,
Bates said quietly.
You got off easy. Admiral Nicole wanted to turn your homeworld into a resort planet. Specialist Carson talked her down.
As the human walked away, Krex Thor realized the true scope of humanity's victory. They hadn't just defeated the Kadar militarily, they had broken them psychologically. The knowledge that their continued existence was merely the result of human mercy was a wound that would never heal. 6 months after the fall of the Kadar Dominion, representatives from 17 galactic civilizations gathered on the neutral world of Helios Prime. The emergency summit had been called to address what many were now referring to as the human question. Presiding over the gathering was Ambassador Talok of the Meridian Conclave, one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations still in existence.
We face an unprecedented situation,
Talok began, his translucent appendages rippling with concern.
The humans have, in less than a standard galactic year, dismantled the Kadar Dominion, an empire that terrorized the quadrant for millennia.
Murmurs spread through the assembled delegates.
While many would consider this a positive development,
Talok continued,
the manner in which it was accomplished is disturbing. The humans deployed overwhelming military force, yes, but their true weapon was psychological warfare. They didn't just defeat the Kadar, they humiliated them. They turned them into an object lesson.
Ambassador Nick Sara of the Silicon Collective raised a crystalline appendage.
The Kadar deserved their fate. They collected species like trophies.
True,
Tulok acknowledged.
But the question remains, are the humans liberators, or simply the new apex predators?
At that moment, the chamber doors slid open. All heads turned to see a single human female enter. Tall, dark-skinned, wearing a simple white suit that somehow conveyed more authority than the ornate robes of the gathered ambassadors.
Ambassador Sophia Gacy,
The chamber AI announced.
representative of Earth and human territories.
The human walked calmly to the central podium, nodding respectfully to Tulok before addressing the assembly.
Thank you for the invitation.
She began, her voice warm yet commanding.
Though I must say, I find it interesting that a summit regarding humanity was organized without initially including humanity.
Tulok's appendages fluttered in the meridian equivalent of embarrassment.
We meant no offense, Ambassador Gacy. We merely sought to establish a consensus before...
Before confronting the terrifying humans?
Gacy finished, a slight smile playing at her lips.
I understand your concerns. Truly, I do. The Kadar situation was regrettable in its necessity.
Regrettable.
Ambassador Krell of the Urtog hegemony growled.
Your fleet obliterated 3,000 Kadar vessels while broadcasting jokes about their combat effectiveness.
Gacy nodded.
Psychological warfare. Effective, wasn't it? It shortened the conflict considerably.
She looked around the chamber.
But I'm not here to justify our military tactics. I'm here to address the real reason for this summit. Fear.
She tapped a control on the podium, and the chamber's holographic display activated, showing image after image of extinct species. Their final recordings, their biological data, their desperate pleas for mercy.
These are from the Kadar vaults,
Gacy explained.
What's left of 572 species systematically eradicated over 15,000 years. Species that might have contributed art, science, philosophy to our shared galactic community.
The images were replaced by a map of former Kadar space, now divided into dozens of newly independent regions.
In the 6 months since the Kadar surrender, humanity has overseen the liberation of 87 enslaved species and the restoration of 143 planetary ecosystems ravaged by Kadar mining operations.
Ambassador Nick Sara's crystalline form shifted in the silicon equivalent of discomfort.
Yet you maintain a military presence throughout the region.
We do.
Gacy acknowledged.
Because restoration takes time. Because fragile new governments need protection from opportunistic neighbors.
Her gaze swept the room meaningfully.
Because someone needs to ensure the mistakes of the past aren't repeated.
She deactivated the hologram and placed her hands on the podium, leaning forward slightly.
Let me be direct. Humanity doesn't want an empire. We've studied history, our own and others. Empires fall. Always. What we want is a stable galaxy where diverse species can thrive without fear of extinction.
Noble words,
Tulok observed.
but your actions...
Our actions,
Gacy interrupted firmly,
speak for themselves. We could have eradicated the Kadar. Admiral Nicole had the firepower to sterilize their homeworld. We chose another path.
She straightened, her expression softening slightly.
What truly terrifies you all isn't our military capability. It's that we're unpredictable. You can't fit us into your existing molds of galactic politics. We're too peaceful to be conquerors, but too warlike to be dismissed.
A heavy silence fell over the chamber.
So, here's my proposal,
Gacy continued.
A galactic restoration initiative. Joint operations between human forces and volunteers from your civilizations to continue the rehabilitation of former Kadar territories. Complete transparency in our military deployments. Cultural exchange programs to foster understanding.
She paused, letting her words sink in.
Or you can continue to hold secret summits and worry about the human question while actual problems go unsolved. Your choice.
Ambassador Krell growled again.
And if we refuse? If we demand you remove your military from the quadrant entirely?
Gacy smiled, a genuine, warm expression that nonetheless sent a chill through many in the chamber.
Then we would respectfully decline, Ambassador Krell, and we would hope that wouldn't be interpreted as an aggressive act.
Her smile faded.
After all, I would hate for your people to learn firsthand why the Zorak left those warnings.
Before Krell could respond, Ambassador Nixara's crystalline form chimed, the Silicon Collective's equivalent of laughter.
I like her.
The silicon-based being declared.
The human speaks truth. The Kadar were a cancer in this galaxy for millennia, and humanity excised them in a matter of days. I, for one, welcome their approach.
Several other ambassadors indicated agreement, their various biological displays showing support for Nixara's position. Talok's appendages rippled thoughtfully. The summit will consider your proposal, Ambassador Gacy. Perhaps we have been hasty in our concerns.
Thank you, Ambassador Talok.
Gacy nodded respectfully.
Humanity doesn't seek fear or submission, just respect and cooperation.
She glanced at Krell.
Though we're perfectly comfortable with fear if respect isn't an option.
As the summit continued, discussing the details of the proposed initiative, a message arrived for Ambassador Gacy. She excused herself briefly, stepping into a private communication chamber. Admiral Nicole's hologram appeared.
How's it going with the tentacle convention? About as expected,
Gacy replied.
Some are terrified, some are grateful, most are cautiously optimistic. And the Ertog?
Nicole asked, referring to Ambassador Krell's species.
Gacy sighed. Hostile. Intelligence was right. They were planning to move into former Kadar space. Our presence there has complicated their ambitions.
As the hologram faded, Gacy composed herself before returning to the summit chamber. The future of human relations with the galactic community was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity had made its mark. Whether as liberators or conquerors remained to be seen, but no one would make the mistake of underestimating them again. In the newly renamed city of New Texas on the Kadar homeworld, former Supreme Warlord Krex Thor stood at the viewing platform of what had once been his palace. Now it served as the headquarters for the Human Restoration Force. Beside him stood a human male, Colonel Jackson, the military governor appointed by Admiral Nicole. Unlike the Admiral, Jackson seemed almost friendly, often engaging Krex Thor in conversation about the rebuilding efforts. Your people are adapting better than expected, Jackson remarked, watching Kadar and human engineers working together on a water purification system below. We are survivors, Krex Thor replied simply. We have learned our lesson. Jackson nodded, sipping from a container of what humans called coffee, a stimulant beverage they seemed addicted to.
You know why Admiral Nicole picked me for this assignment?
Krex Thor glanced at the human curiously. Your military experience?
Nah.
Jackson laughed. I was a history professor before joining the military, specialized in the rise and fall of empires. He gestured at the sprawling city. This is how it always ends, you know? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And humanity? Krex Thor couldn't help asking. Will you not build an empire of your own? Jackson's expression grew serious.
We're trying something different. A network rather than a hierarchy. Partnership instead of dominance.
He shrugged.
Might fail spectacularly, but it's worth a shot.
As they spoke, a small Kadar child approached, offering Jackson a native fruit. The human accepted it with a smile and a word of thanks in the Kadar language. The child scampered away, clearly delighted.
See that?
Jackson said.
6 months ago, That kid was being trained to kill for the glory of the Dominion. Now, he's just a kid, bringing fruit to the weird alien with no scales. Krex Thor watched the child rejoin a group of young Kadar playing what appeared to be a human game.
Perhaps there is wisdom in your approach.
Let's hope so. Jackson finished his coffee. For what it's worth, I voted against renaming your capital New Texas. Thought it was petty.
What would you have called it?
Krex Thor asked. Jackson smiled. Phoenix. Earth mythological creature that rises from its own ashes, reborn. As the sun set over the city, Krex Thor considered the human's words. Rebirth, not extinction. A chance to learn from the mistakes of the past. Perhaps the final warning about humans should have been more nuanced. Do not anger the humans. But if you do, pray they offer mercy rather than justice. Somewhere in the depths of space, aboard the USS Don't Even Think About It, Admiral Nicole recorded her daily log. Galaxy remains stable. Former Kadar subjects adapting well to independence. Restoration projects proceeding on schedule. She paused, taking a sip from her cup. And still no sign of trouble from the Urtag. Maybe they're smarter than the Kadar after all. Her XO, Lieutenant Bates, entered with a data pad. Latest intelligence, Admiral. The Urtag Summit representatives are returning to their homeworld. Looks like they're backing down. Good. Nicole nodded. Let's hope the lesson sticks. Do you think it will, ma'am? Bates asked. Peace, I mean. Will it last? Nicole set down her cup and looked out at the stars through the view screen. History suggests no, but we've got something the Kadar didn't. What's that? Better PR? Nicole smiled. And bigger guns, just in case. As the massive ship continued its patrol, the galaxy watched and waited, learning the most important lesson of all. Humans weren't inherently cruel or violent. They were simply very, very good at both when the situation demanded it. The choice, as Ambassador Gacy had made clear, belonged to the galaxy.